Yeah. I'm the cream of the crop, and the cream always rises to the top.
All right, roll the intro.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Area of Expertise, a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition podcast where we cover all things D&D. From the massive worlds you build to the heroes you play, AoE has you covered. Happy listening.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Area of Expertise. I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Devin.
And I'm Thor.
And today we're going to be talking a little bit about dungeon making as well as some dungeon crawling. So we got a little bit for both the game masters and the players here today. But before we get started, gentlemen, do you guys do anything cool with D&D this week?
Yeah, I'm actually integrating D&D into some of my schoolwork. Me and a fellow classmate are teaming up on a project where we're making a program that runs fight simulations between monsters and characters. We've built out every class with set stats and set ACs.
Really?
And,
Oh wow,
yep.
That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, it's like a little combat simulator, and like he's doing the classes, and he asked for my help because he knew that I played a lot of D&D, and he doesn't really know a whole lot about it, but he thought it was interesting.
Because spoiler, combat rating does not mean anything in 5e.
Oh no.
So it's like he's designing just like monster tables and like, is it random encounters or like scripted?
We're debating on that. We haven't figured that out yet. He's finished all of the like classes, and you'll have a screen where you can actually pick which class you're gonna play, and you get like basically a pre-made character sheet.
Okay.
Like the paladins have smite factored in, rogues have sneak attack factored in. It's all 5th edition based.
That's pretty nice.
He's doing that, and I will be doing the monster stat blocks.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool.
That's pretty neat.
I remember doing a lot of like in high school I took a little bit of a programming class, and the first thing that we did was doing like a Pokemon-esque like 1v1
battle simulation.
Yeah, like there's a defense stat and an attack stat, and they have to like calculate into themselves. It's super cool. It's a real good way to get like your footing with stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm having a good time with it.
Yeah, that'd be pretty nice to kind of like get the kind of the raw expectation of as a DM, a raw expectation of how this combat may go, instead of it being like, oh well, on paper it says the CR is 5, and that's for a 4-player group, and all of them are level 5, and there's 4 of them, so it should be fine.
Yeah.
But come to find out, your playable characters have found a way to supersede that to where like, and you can factor in that kind of thing.
The program's supposed to run to give you some choices, but like it's not a full simulation. Like it doesn't account for everything. No simulation does.
No.
But like you have options for what your character is going to do, and you roll initiative.
But just like a base information is better than having a guesstimation.
It's like, hey, let's prove that a well-rounded party could beat the shit out of something that is challengingly appropriate for them.
It's supposed to be challenging.
Yeah, that's just quick aside. The challenge rating in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is pretty irrelevant.
It leaves a lot to be desired.
It's you will find if you go just by challenge rating, you will have very easy combats.
It'll be very underwhelming.
Yeah.
So I find it to be either one way or the other. Like, since I have a larger party myself, I tend to lean higher in the CR rating because there's more of them, especially if it's only like one monster.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But it's
one
either
monster will get their dicks kicked in.
Yeah, it's either one monster will just get absolutely curb stomped by the party, or that monster will never get hit and start just knocking them down one by one.
That's the difference between monsters and humanoid villains, is that the higher the CR goes, the fatter the health pool, but it seems like the smaller the AC is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
easy to hit.
That's
like,
just a balancing technique.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense.
No one likes to miss.
No one likes to miss, but you get to a certain point where if you roll, like when we were level 13 in your campaign, Devin, I would roll an 8 on the dice, and I would still make it over a 20. So at what point in time is the balancing act just becoming more of it doesn't apply?
Well,
I think level 10 is where it stops really applying, because then you have like you have your weapons +2 and you have all your bonuses and stuff, and you get to that point where you have a +13 or +11 to your hit. And
so there's I do know some DMs that their characters will be considered like hero status, using air quotes, at around level 10.
yeah,
Like that is where they kind of stop leveling.
5th edition does have like that tier list already.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has a little chart that shows like the tier list, like 1 through 5 is like local hero, and then
yeah,
like countrywide hero, and then like world hero, and then
Yeah.
like universe saver is like up to like 15 to 20.
yeah.
Which I guess it depends on just how far and how deep you want your.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Players
there's that golden range of like 6 to 12 where like that's the meat of
That's a sweet
yeah.
spot.
Just because you get all the cool perks and stuff until it gets, I don't want to say boring, but until like you have to fight world threat after world threat after world
Yeah,
threat
it
to
can be a
feel
little taxing.
to feel like you're challenged.
You shift into One Punch Man for a bit.
Basically,
Yeah.
like it's either you're One Punch Man or you're getting One Punch Manned. Well, like
Perfect analogy.
Just getting rocked.
yeah, because it's either you have the perfect answer to stuff, like you've built your party to where you want it, like you've had some deaths along the lines, and you can get a grasp of what you need. You can build that to where you have a well-rounded group, and then you just start mowing down people. Like grunts and stuff are just getting demolished. Like Rogue X is probably the sweetest spot from 6 to 12, just because they can disable so much stuff in a dungeon. It is ridiculous. Like you make a rogue ranger, they can almost demolish an entire dungeon, because they can they can pick locks, do traps, they can do everything that kind of hinders the party and keeps like, and it can make like the noisier characters stay quiet, because they don't have to like.
Well, you can try.
Yeah, you can try, but it makes it a lot easier, I think.
Mm-hmm. Say, what we're going to talk about a little bit later is I actually have a little bit of a point about making non-combat encounters in dungeons interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're going to get into that. But first I want to talk about what I did with D&D this week.
Sorry about that.
You tangent, motherfucker.
But I decided to completely flesh out my custom class. So,
Oh, what was it?
it is a subclass of fighter called the Flogger,
Ooh.
and it's a entirely whip-based subclass, like very Castlevania.
I really wish whips were better.
Yeah, I really wish they were just usable.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of like tweaking, but the whole class is centered around just using whip, getting better with the whip, and it goes down like I use the Arcane Archer as kind of like a outline for it.
Okay.
So it goes down like your whip is now a pseudo arcane focus.
Well, if
Okay.
it kind of feels like if you want to make a Belmont,
Yeah.
you would mix that with Blood Hunter,
Yeah.
like that subclass in Blood Hunter to really get the most out of
The
it.
aesthetic.
Yeah.
Which the very first thing you choose is the fighter archetype.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where like if you pick archery, you get like a +2 to bow or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For the whip, all I did was you pick the Scourge Master, which by the way, whip is also called a Scourge, which sounds a lot cooler than Flogger, but
How gnarly.
yeah,
Yeah, just call it Scourge.
Yeah.
the Scourge class.
Yeah.
It gives you a +2 to hit, just flat, and it gives you it changes your damage dice to a D6,
That's cool.
because like just having a D4 hit dice, well, like you get the 10-foot range and finesse, but it's still really underwhelming.
Yeah. Well, that's why you just use 2, and you're just like, and you do Battle Master, and you can just trip people.
I'm gonna dual wield my whips.
Yeah, but at that point, you can just do pole arms and just be more
Yeah.
effective.
hmm
And that's what's sad.
Which that's something I haven't done a lot of testing with full character builds.
Yeah.
So I don't know what like feats will break it or what multi-classes will break it. So it still has a lot of testing to do. If I remember in the YouTube link, I'll include a link to the home brewery if you
Nice.
guys want to look at it. But
Did you use the website The Home Brewery?
Yeah.
I love that website.
it's such a good website.
If anybody's ever looking for something to like make their own, The formatting in the home brewery, is it .net or .com?
I think it's .com.
Either way, the home brewery is just a great place to
just
have like
Google
an
search
aesthetically pleasing homebrew thing that looks like it came right out of the book.
That way it doesn't look like you're just handwriting stuff.
Yeah.
It's all HTML, but like it's within, I think, like 5 minutes of reading an article, I learned it no problem. I'm not much of a coder.
Well, they also have like an example page on there, so you can kind of figure out what formatting is.
It was all super easy. Anyway, gentlemen, let's get into our main topic of discussion.
Oh boy.
We're going to be talking about dungeon design, and then later on we're going to be talking about physical dungeon crawling. And I guess where we're going to start is what you do when you make a dungeon. You start it. So, gentlemen, where do you usually start when you're tasked with making a dungeon for your players to go through? Where do you begin?
That's kind of a hard question because I don't really. I'm not good at making dungeons. Like that's my weakest point is doing the smaller things of DMing. Mm-hmm. Not smaller things, I should say, but like
the micromanaging.
I hate micromanaging. Like I want you guys to do what you want to do and have fun. So like dungeon building, it makes me feel like I'm railroading you. Mm-hmm. But if I do have to do it, I always make sure that there's options. Like you always want to make sure like your party has an option to do stuff. Mm-hmm. Like to start out, like are you talking like how they enter the dungeon, or how do you start by building a dungeon?
Kind of like your, let's say your players are they're level 3. Okay. They've been doing some adventuring, some odd jobs, but now it is time to get down to business. It's time to kick into the main story. For an example, let's say your main story has 4 dungeons and then the big bad, and at the end of each dungeon is a goal, maybe like someone to save or a boss to fight.
Get the MacGuffin.
Yeah. Like we'll start with like as a goal.
Okay, so a goal's always like you are running from somebody and you have to get through this dungeon, or you have to save the damsel, or the king has been like the king has been kidnapped, or ex relative of a party, or what have you has been captured. They have a chest, like just the tropes, and it's something that is meaningful for your party, not just like we're just walking down this dungeon and getting stuff. Like that has to be something meaningful to really get them interested in it, I think.
Which that's actually a point that I have is kind of ask yourself, what is the purpose of this dungeon being here?
Okay.
What purpose does it serve?
If I'm creating a dungeon, I've created quite a few. Mostly when I start to design a dungeon or start to try to implement a dungeon, the most important thing to me is what is its purpose? Like why are they going here? How does it fit into the task that's already at hand? Mm-hmm. It's possible to just toss in a dungeon for somebody along the way if they're just walking around, but that's a lot harder for you. Like you need to plan out dungeons. They can't just stumble on one.
Yeah, they can't just be walking through a forest and all of a sudden they see this big crypt that just pops out of nowhere.
The necromancer is infesting the crypt with undead. He's stealing all of the undead and he's creating an army out of them. You have to go stop him before he can completely take over.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to implement a dungeon that just happens.
Yeah.
Not to say that you can't. It's just
going to be very hard for you if you do.
Because it is kind of interesting if let's say you're wandering through like a wooded trail on the way to the next town, and out of the corner of your eye you see like a small clearing, and there's like maybe like a goblin den, and your adventurers are like, hey, maybe these goblins have some loot, let's go roughhouse them. Mm-hmm. And that might be an interesting little encounter for them. You don't have to have it be like a sprawling dungeon at all.
It can be a little cavern with a few offshoots, but you can play that on the fly.
And make sure, like, if you do that, it's not something that the party has to do. Because, like, our most recent session for my new campaign, like, I set some stuff up. You guys just bypassed, and you don't have to, like, don't get upset that they bypassed it. You can always use that for a later date.
Yeah. In fact, I have a really good example of something like that happening. My party, I guess, yeah, they were raiding a goblin den. I guess there was a reason I picked that example.
Subconscious.
Yeah, the subconscious needs to know that there's goblins.
There was a town whose they store grain and whatnot for the winter, all that jazz. But their grain silos were being broken into in the middle of the night by goblins, and the food was being stolen. So their task was to go to the goblin nest, take care of them, and then pour poison on their bedding so that they can't come back.
Oh, Jesus.
Dark.
It was a basic
awesome
extermination job.
Yeah. Just throwing antifreeze in your trash cans to get rid of raccoons. Have you guys ever noticed that, like, goblins are like the raccoons of D&D?
Pretty much.
Well, it depends on how you, like, implement them. Though in my universe, they're definitely
they're
like
stereotypically the raccoons.
Yeah.
And would kobolds be
Kobolds are
possums?
rats.
Okay.
Kobolds are rats.
I think there are some like intelligent offshoots of goblin, I guess.
Yeah, like hobgoblin.
Hobgoblins are super smart.
So it depends if you want to write them as like there are goblins who are just like these kind of caveman-esque, like very tribal society.
That's how Lord of the Rings does it.
Yeah.
Goblins are just orcs that have been underground for so long that they have a little tribal, like,
and
incoherent society.
They've lost like their like mass and stuff.
Yeah,
from
they're
being orcs.
gangly, but they're scrappy.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, their task was to exterminate the goblins and then make sure they can't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the dungeon I made was just a 2-room clearing. It had the main room that you enter, they go a little bit underground, and it had maybe like a couple of traps, maybe like a tripwire that tells them, there are people here or what have you. But their rogue did really well and disarmed and dispatched the guard and then saw the tripwire. So I was like, okay, no big deal. They get through the first room, no problem, but then they get into the second room and it's just teeming with little goblins all like eating this grain bounty, and they notice that one of them is much stockier than the rest. He's kind of like the leader of the pack.
He's just taller than everybody else, so
Yeah.
he's the leader.
The red cap, if you will.
Yeah.
And they take care of, like, long story short, they take care of the encounter, they do the thing, but it turns out that the big goblin is a huge coward when all of his dudes are dead, because like goblins in the Forgotten Realms absolutely fear death more than anything else.
They're pack animals.
Yeah.
Well, it's
If they
'cause
don't
they're,
have the upper hand in numbers, they'll probably run away.
Yeah.
The god of the goblins is this like ruthless tyrant that if you're a goblin and you die, you get sent to like this pit where he just tortures you for eternity.
That's
and
a lot of things that are being tortured.
And they all know it, so goblins have this distinct fear of being dead. That's why they'll run away if they're in trouble. But they kill all the dudes, and then the big goblin is like spooked and hides under the table. Like he uses action to hide under the table, and the party is like, you know what? He's hiding. He's not a threat. We can just take care of him a little bit. Let's just do this poison thing right now. So they start poisoning the beds, but they take like their sweet time with it. So I tell them, all right, you did that. Now what are you going to do? Oh, we're going to flip over the table and take care of the last goblin.
Yeah.
They flip it over,
gone.
and there's
He's
just a hole in the ground.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah, he ate through the wood.
He just scurried out of there. He pieced out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of them are listening to the podcast now, but just know he'll be back.
Recurring villains are great.
Jeffrey's coming back with a vengeance.
So you can definitely
This
use
Friday.
these minor dungeons to implement like minor bosses, like
Yeah.
minor big bads.
And if it's not taken care of properly and the villain
Lives.
puts his survival above
Yeah.
trying to win,
Yeah.
then you have a cool recurring villain that
Well,
the
yeah.
players are invested in.
And I mean, and it's like the party didn't do anything wrong or anything like that by not doing.
Sometimes things just don't work out.
Yeah, well, and like they think one thing and it happens to be another thing. It just that's
Circumstance.
Yeah.
And that kind of pushes us into the next topic
Oh,
I want
boy.
to talk about, which is your dungeon meant to protect someone or something?
Now, is a dungeon like an actual like you're going into a crypt or you're going into like a dungeon, or is a dungeon just like any encounter?
I think a dungeon is considered any indoor thing with multiple passageways and rooms.
Like
Okay.
a closed off from the outside world kind of encounter.
Like a little
Okay.
A little like warehouse is a dungeon.
Okay, because I'm building an encounter for you guys, but it's a town. It's not a...
No, it's not. That's not a dungeon.
Okay,
I'd say that's just an encounter.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up, like how that is.
Now, like if in that town, if we were like in a tavern and had to clear out the tavern, I would consider the tavern then a dungeon.
Because there's multiple
many
rooms.
a dungeon in that town.
Yeah.
Because it's like a pop-up town on a coast, and it's just like a bunch of like shanty houses.
It's a very like port town.
Yeah.
Like people come here and people go, but there's like a group that stays.
Exactly. Like you have townies and you have ships.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty... I like that archetype of town, actually. That's like my favorite town to build.
Yeah.
Is like port towns.
But yeah, I think a dungeon, whether it's housing or protecting something, I feel like that's high tier, not high tier, but it's higher level story importance. If a dungeon is housing or protecting something, it's important.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't throw those willy-nilly, but when it is in there, it should be major.
Yeah, because like from level like 1 to 5, you're not really like you're not like, in my mind, 1 to 5 is like you're building your reputation.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we can do this stuff. Like we
Take
have like,
every job you can get.
Yeah, like we have like these these smaller jobs that we've done, and we've ran into some dungeons, so we know like kind of like what we can do. Like from 5 up is I think when you can really get into like the Lord of the Land has asked you to clear out X because they've stole something, or they have something that he wants, or they're guarding Excalibur, is when you can really start doing that because you've made a name for your party.
Yeah, it's like it's the difference between like a low level dungeon, which is they've stolen this thing and here's where I think they've taken it, or they already have this thing at higher levels and you need to stop them.
Yeah. Which I don't know, maybe it's my old bones or my upbringing, but I when I build dungeons, I tend to take a very classic Legend of Zelda approach.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like there are these sprawling rooms, and then when you find the exit to these sprawling rooms, there's a boss, and when you beat the boss, you get a thing.
I mean,
or
it's
like
an archetype for a reason.
Yeah,
it works.
And I've been really leaning into that lately. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but the whole like fight a bunch of underlings, then fight the boss, then get the key item that you need to progress.
Yeah,
I think is a good starting formula.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because then like you can always fight like a mini boss, and they have the key to the next area of the dungeon and stuff like that. Like have like a key to open up the next dungeon, and then that like the main boss has like the pot of greed that you need to return to the owner of the shop to get the key to another place that you have to go. It's a very Zelda thing, but it works, and it keeps the players on a track. Not that you're railroading them, but
it keeps
like,
them invested in a plot line.
Exactly, and they know what the plot line is. It's not this smoke and mirror stuff. They know that they have to do X to get to Y.
It's much less likely that they'll stop and be like, wait, what are we doing?
Yeah, because
exactly.
It is a game, so you have to have game mechanics in it, and
or if somebody does stop and ask, wait, what are we doing? Another player can be like, oh, well, we did this, and now we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And then they're like...
We have the pot of greed to go get the key of the city to open up the city of the dead.
Yeah, it's a very domino effect.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you guys, but when I play personally, when I'm a player character, and I kind of notice this in my own characters, or my own PCs, is that they'll do something, and then... they'll immediately forget why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So it's good to give them like here's an item to remind you what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's not arcane or beneficial. It's literally just like a little trinket that says, do this next.
Yeah, do this, go here.
It's a placeholder.
Yeah, like I tend to forget, honestly. Like you get caught up in all the encounters, and you're like, I'm almost dead. I'm out of spell slots.
Well, we've been playing in that in Dragon Heist. That's been rough because so many things are being thrown at you at a time that like there's just branches of tangents everywhere.
Oh no!
And each of us have like we're all pretty mature players, and we all want to do our own things with our characters, and like the modules are kind of made to like railroad you in a position.
Yeah.
So all of us want to do our own things, and all these other situations are being thrown at us, and we all want to do it different ways.
And we all are we all role play our characters. Here, we all role play our characters differently, and like not role play our characters differently, but like we are mature characters, and we know what our characters want, and so we won't like just blindly follow someone else's interests. Like we have a blood hunter who wants to get rid of this book of Asmodeus, and we have 3 rogue characters who probably would want to sell it.
Yeah.
My character actually doesn't care about the book one way or another.
Yeah, but like if you could sell it for money, you would. Like, and if my character trying to be power hungry was like, well, why don't we have someone come in, like someone that we don't care about or someone that we don't like, have them summon Asmodeus, kill them, and like make them like have like them be commanded to do what they like, to say what they want, and then like to give their life for it. We can just have the MacGuffin, because that's the whole thing about Dragon Heist, is that we have to get this MacGuffin that doesn't really matter. And like I'm like, so this is just like a circumvent of doing that, is how my character sees it. But everyone, like other people are like, no, because then you're summoning Asmodeus to the mortal realm, and I'm like, I'm not,
which is really bad. Like Devin as a player knows that is bullshit, crazy, but Cogmart is incorrigible and doesn't care about most higher power things.
Like I've heard of Asmodeus as just like a boogeyman. Like I'm like, is he really that bad?
He's the boogiest boogeyman.
Yeah, Thor as a player knows that.
Yeah,
but as
boogeyman,
but
or
as
literal Satan.
But as Zolly Birdman, he just knows. He was an urchin in Waterdeep. He doesn't know the hierarchy of devils.
Yeah,
he just knows that Asmodeus is a pretty mean dude.
But I did enjoy like our last session though, because we've all kind of like concisely agreed on something, and we're going to get something, and it led us into like it led us into the City of the Dead, and we actually just got into a dungeon.
Which I think that is like the biggest. That is 100% due to Stan being
Stan's a godly DM.
Yeah, because
shout out to Stan.
We are seriously like all 5 of us were doing 5 different things, and he has somehow got us to all the lines have arranged to where we're all together again. I don't know if that's part of the mod. I don't think so. Yeah.
I have read the beginning of the module. It took us at least 2 months to get to chapter 2.
Yeah.
That probably comes with just years and years of party split happening.
He's got so much more experience.
Yeah.
Which he was someone that we're going to try and have on the show.
Yeah, I gotta ask him, because he's good.
He's really good at he's good at behind the scenes getting you to do what he wants you to do, kind of thing. But I don't know.
But he's good at implementing it in a fun way.
Yeah, exactly. He's good at like subterfuging it to where like you don't know that you're being put down this path, but you are.
It doesn't feel like you're being railroaded.
Like
but
he did a really good job with the dungeon that we're in now. Like there were a lot of mechanics to it. For like we went through like 1.5 rooms,
and
it was like a little crypt with full of a bunch of ghouls, and they have the MacGuffin that we're after. And it was crazy, and it was really good. It was set up perfectly. I got the right ambience from what he described,
and we all kind of like tried to do our thing, and nothing really like.
There was a proper amount of threat.
Yeah, it worked, but it didn't work, and then it worked. It was like a really good like tightrope.
Very fluctuating.
There was never a moment where you thought that this is falling apart.
Exactly. It was never a disaster, and it was never like we were overkill.
I had an oh shit moment once, but I'm a rogue, so I quickly got out of that.
Yeah, thank God for bonus action dashing.
That's where you want to be when you're designing dungeons. Is like, wait, is that a segue? I think that's a segue.
Keep it a wave form of interesting.
My God, what a segue!
What a mad lad!
An absolute mad lad.
One of my next points is actually preparing for the worst.
Oof.
So it's let's say you've designed your dungeon, you've gotten everything planned out, you got all these passageways, you got traps set and enemies, and then your players just beef it.
I say, are we preparing for the worst on the DM's standpoint or the players' standpoint?
They just railroad, not railroad, but like they just like bull over everything you set up.
Like the players screw up your dungeon, or your dungeon screws over your players. I guess we can talk about both.
Yeah, we can talk about both. Let's start with players goofing up your dungeon.
Yeah.
So let's say you have an idol, and that idol is meant to be a puzzle that unlocks a room for your MacGuffin or whatever. Example, let's say your players just have no idea what to do with this thing. They are completely dumbfounded by its existence.
Yeah.
So they decide.
So that's where we're going. Okay.
So they decide to break it. They decide to make strength check after strength check to try and just destroy this idol.
It's a rough spot because you want to keep consequences real, but you also just don't want to ruin the game for your players.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be quick on your feet to think about stuff.
If you break it, like, realistically, there's no other way. Like, there's nobody who's just going to drop you in a phone line to be like, here's your answer. So I guess a good way to deal with that, in my opinion, is if they break the main way, have a second way that's much harder to get to but easier to understand. Like this one was easy to get to, but maybe they just didn't grasp it. Make the next way to get in hard to get to, fraught with danger, traps and everything. And but then it's easy to like oh, we have to like do this puzzle box of a thing. It's like but we broke it. The next one is literally just a key. It's just a key. It's like who doesn't know what to do with the key?
Kill the thing, get the key, open the door.
But you have to fight something super hard. It's the option of the long and hard way or the short and fast way, but like, or I should say the short and hard way or the long and easy way is kind of you have to have options and you have to be quick on your feet to think of like, okay, if it's an arcane thing and they don't have any, like if they're all martial, like nobody is like arcane.
They've all got
savvy.
a -1 in Arcana.
Well, even then, I usually shy away from DM PCs, but you could use a DM PC or an NPC that's like, I know about this thing, and it doesn't seem like any of you would have any knowledge of that. I'll come with you.
It's then you have to Dante.
Then you have an added challenge where you have to protect that person. They might not be able to defend themselves.
That's one of my like favorite ways to implement something like that, especially since
I had the answer.
Like I myself, I don't consider myself a very good puzzle designer. So there will be instances where I make a puzzle that I think is super easy because I made it.
Yeah.
And
you already have the answer, and then you make the puzzle around it.
Yeah, and then like I give it to my players, and they don't know what to do. So maybe like you said with a DM NPC that is just there to kind of push, like give them a nudge toward the answer.
Or here's a special pair of glasses or something.
Or maybe like there's a corpse of an adventurer who also tried the puzzle.
Or it's like that's a clue. Is like, what did they do wrong, and how do we not fall into that?
Or have like journal pages that have been ripped out of a book. Or just
you have to like go around the dungeon and find the breadcrumbs, put it all together. It's like, maybe, it's this.
Maybe there's a big scorch mark next to that one lever, and it's like, well, I don't know what that means, but
I did that in one dungeon. It was fairly easy, but it was simplistic, and I'm a little proud of it. But do you remember the dungeon in the Falkir clans under the mound where you had to go in like through the gate? You had to find 4 little gems that were scattered through the.
Oh yeah.
And then you had to place them in the right order. But the gems were. I don't remember all of them, but every gem was different, and its name was an acronym for open. Like it was like
I remember
opal, peridot, emerald, and I don't remember what the N was, but it opened up this gate. Like they had to fight some gnolls to find some of the gems because some of them had found it before them.
Oh no, sorry. I'm using my limited knowledge of geology to think about what the gem would be, like a precious stone.
I had to look it up.
And
I just saw Thor like staring off, and I'm like, what's happening?
Sorry, I did have to look up an N gem.
Yeah,
like I knew
really
the first
hard.
3 off the top of my head, but I'm like, there's no gem that starts with N. I gotta look one up. I found one.
It's like when we were playing in our buddy Harrison's campaign, and he was like naming off gyms, and there was this one that was like so obscure.
Oh,
like,
in that castle.
Oh God.
Yeah. I don't even know what color that is, bud.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's like a bloody brown orange.
Lapis lazuli.
Lapis lazuli.
Wow.
Oh wow.
But yeah, that was just a tangent. Like I liked that. I liked that puzzle. It was simple. It wasn't very hard to do, but it was a roadblock.
Yeah, I remember being absolutely stumped by the order of these, like frantically looking through my like character notes, like, is there anything that spelled anything like a password?
And I'm like, you have an opal, a peridot.
I didn't put it together until like
I think Ty was actually the one that put it together.
Yeah, Ty
is so good at puzzles.
He typed them all in the chat in order, like one after the other, and he's just like,
and he capitalized the letters.
Yeah, it's like
oh
wait.
my God.
It's the little. I think that it's like it was both a riddle and a puzzle, and I love the riddle puzzles that are just like get you. It's like, oh well, duh.
It's like, now I feel silly.
and I think that's like a really big thing for a lot of people, because like the Riddler is one of Batman's like most famous rogues gallery, because people enjoy that like sense of mystery and seeing where like
the
puzzle and like exercising your brain to try and figure out where this is or where it goes.
Like you almost want to solve it before Batman does.
Exactly. But like there's a caveat to that, to where you don't want to be puzzle after puzzle after puzzle after puzzle, because
it gets old.
And
it loses its novelty,
and it feels like you're it's just to a player sometimes it feels like you're doing this to slow down the game.
Yeah, it's padding.
It almost feels like it's either padding or like you're trying to set them up to fail.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And you never want to foster that, like
like I think that depending on the size of your dungeon, between 2 and 3 good puzzles and or 2 or 3 good traps.
Yeah.
With like little minor traps sprinkled in would probably be okay. Like little tripwire, like arrow.
Yeah,
shot.
one major trap isn't bad, but if you do like
party
wiping trap after party wiping trap after party wiping trap, it gets so annoying. Like
that dungeon with the hallways that I did, that was overly trapped, but it's because I used a random generator. I'm like, this is bad.
Which that's actually, you guys set up the segue perfectly, because I did want to talk about traps.
I'm so good at everything.
Doing so good.
Yeah, you guys are nailing it. So the first topic in here is, what in your mind makes a trap feel unfair? Because there's this big disconnect between like when a player hits a trap and takes just an assload of damage, they feel cheated.
You have that, and you have the party wipe traps, where it's just like, oh, it's a pitfall, but it is a tripwire for a pitfall with the whole party in it. It's not the one person falls in. If one person falls in, that's okay in quotations, but if it's the whole party, that's when it starts getting a little bit, unless it's like a trap to another floor, not just like to your death. It gets not messed up. It gets a little bit unfair as a player when you have to slow down to a crawl, so that way you don't die. Like, the threat of death is something that's important, but it's when you see the threat is when it starts getting is where it doesn't feel as like unfair. It's like that gimmick of like, you get shot in the back of the head, you couldn't do anything, you're dead, make a new character.
I have a pretty strong feeling on this, but I forget the word that it is. Like the indirect relationship, where like one goes up, the other goes down. What's that called? Or like if one goes up, the other goes up. I'm blanking on the term for that.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But like you get the concept. For traps, for me, the more deadly the trap, the more noticeable it should be. If it's really deadly, it should be able to be easier noticed. To me,
it's mostly
usually the DC and the damage will scale up together. But like, who wants to be like, oh, I got a 20 on my perception. Do I see anything? No, you don't. Oh, okay, there must be nothing here because I rolled really high. Steps. Oh, you take 15 D6s of poison damage.
It should be Skyrim log traps.
Yeah.
They just thwack you.
Have you ever been whacked by one of those?
Yeah, you insta die unless you're level 30.
Yeah. So like, but they're so noticeable because that's the point of it.
Hanging there. You can see it. It looks different.
That's the point, is that it's something that will insta-gib you, but it's something that is so noticeable that if you're not looking at it, like if you're looking straight at the ground and you can't see it, then I don't say you're playing the game wrong, because there's no way to play the game wrong, but
you're being unfair to your players.
You're being unfair to your players if you don't make it obvious. But if you make it obvious and it still gets them, then it's almost on them.
Yeah, it's a huge communication thing.
Yeah.
Is like if
set like your least damaging and less threatening trap up front.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, there's traps here, and then everybody will be on the alert for it.
Which it's like you said with the falling log trap. Is if you say, like, if you communicate to your players, there is a slight raised tile on the floor. You can clearly see it. But you don't tell them about the very obvious log suspended on the ceiling.
Yeah, you give away the trigger, but not the mechanism.
Yeah, it's like you are both their eyes and their ears.
Yeah.
So you need to communicate that.
I think this is where passive perception really comes in handy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if they're coming up on your trap, it's a little telling, but ask for, if you know you're in a dungeon, I think the best thing to do is at the very beginning, ask everybody's passive perception and write that down if you know you're going to be dealing with traps.
But what's nice about doing that is that then it puts them on edge. So it's a double-edged sword for DMs, because they think there's stuff there, but that's what you want to do.
Yeah, you want them to be on edge for a dungeon.
Exactly, and you want them to be, okay, there's traps in here and stuff like that. Like, what's everyone's passive perception? And then they get not jumpy, but they get like more observant almost.
And alert.
Yeah.
Which you almost like, I would honestly ask them passive perception way before they enter the dungeon.
Yeah. Like at the beginning of the session.
Yeah, you should always have that written down, because it'll very rarely change. You should definitely update it, like ask them again when they hit their ability score improvement. Or like if they get to pick a new proficiency or something.
Oh yeah, and look at when the proficiency bonuses go up, because it'll go up by 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can always be like, you enter the room, who has a passive perception above 13?
Yeah.
And
or don't even ask. Look at your little list and say, Johnny, you are able to notice the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what to do with it, but it's there and you see it.
Honestly, I would even write down each character's like base Arcana score, because if there's a magical trap, like it's hard to perceive something that isn't physically there.
Yeah. Well, that also kind of mitigates the detect magic spell. Like sometimes if a player asks if they can make an Arcana check to see something, I'll give it to them, but the
detect magic is so like finite.
But it's a ritual, and it highlights anything that's magic.
Is it a ritual?
It's a ritual.
Okay, never mind. I thought it was.
It auras any magical thing within 30 feet of you.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean for like the initial like the boogeyman's in the room kind of thing. Okay. Not like here he is. It's like you feel, I don't know, the magical spidey sense that magic users have. Yeah. So it starts going off.
I often use Arcana as both like the magical spidey sense and the knowledge check.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot easier than, because what, you have to do a ritual for 10 minutes?
Yeah, ritual tax on 10 minutes.
I feel like that's way too long.
Well, you do it before you enter the dungeon. I mean, it's a long time.
Is it always active? Is it active for like how long?
It stays active for I think 10 more minutes.
Oh, it does it. But
so you can always like prepare on your way too.
Yeah, but like you have to. But you can't be doing anything else when you make a ritual.
Yeah.
So you have to sit down and you have to like do the incense and everything if we're being like roleplay technical. So you can't like be walking and doing stuff. You have to like sit down and do this.
That's on the magic user to tell the party like, hey, I can really help us out if I have this up. Let's wait out here for a second.
So you could always just like, let's say your party is aware that there might be traps. So before they even enter the dungeon, they are prepping their rituals. At that time, in that 10 minutes, you could roll percentiles or anything to be like, does anything happen? Does anything inside notice people just lurking outside?
Yeah, like usually if you've populated your dungeon with intelligent creatures, those creatures will probably put a patrol or a guard on the perimeter.
And the very last thing I want to talk about here, while we're talking about dungeon making from a GM standpoint is how do you make your own puzzles? Or like how do you go about implementing a puzzle in your dungeon?
Puzzles, for me, I've always had kind of a hard time with puzzles too. It's hard to get it just right, but I usually will use traps to defend minor things or corridors where like maybe the enemies are setting up an ambush. I use puzzles to house or defend something else. Like for me, puzzles are the big bad of non-combat encounters.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's to keep like a optional like side thing. Like if you're going to the big bad, it's gonna be enemy kind of thing. Like if you see a door over there or something, you can do like a puzzle to get to the dwarven gold that they didn't even know about because they're goblins. So like if you see a dwarven door over there and you have to do this,
like you might even see those goblins trying to get into it.
Yeah,
they just can't.
You just see scratch marks on the door because they don't understand the mechanism or the puzzle piece. Or the big bad has the piece to the door that you can come back and put in.
The dwarven key rune that opens the door.
Yeah, and he was using it as a toothpick or what have you.
Which there's absolutely no shame because a lot of people want to have interesting involved puzzles in their dungeons, like the real head scratcher kind of puzzles. There's absolutely no shame because I've done it plenty of times. It's just going on to like Reddit or something and searching up puzzle ideas or something like that because there's infinite ideas.
There are people way better at it than I will.
And it's really hard to sit down for who knows how long to think of like a puzzle that is the perfect puzzle for interactivity and not being a time sink. Yeah, because that's what really like throws it off is when a puzzle becomes a time sink where it's like
this was interesting at first, but like I'm just burning out.
Yeah, your PCs are still messing with it an hour later, and it's not getting it, and they're getting frustrated, and you're just like, at some point it becomes this was just a time sink. And
which you should definitely like, just like how monsters have CRs, I feel like puzzles should have CRs.
Yeah. They do.
Like, if you pick a theme for your puzzle, like let's say, like with your gem thing, let's replace the letters with like the 4 basic elements. That's a huge RPG trope.
Yeah.
And let's say when you put a certain gem in a slot, it changes a color. It's like,
or it shimmers.
Yeah, like now you're literally just playing that like child's game where they put the shape into the hole.
Yeah.
And you just wait for them to do it. That could be like a CR1. And then maybe you have one that's an actual puzzle box. Like that could be like a CR5 or 7 even.
One of my favorite dungeons that I have done actually was just an entire puzzle that Umoth, the extra dimensional water temple, basically.
Yeah.
I got that idea from somebody else online when I was looking for it, but the whole thing was you had to go through these leveled corridors and activate like these like push stones that activated water flows that pushed a pillar up until it opened up, like it filled up with water, but it also pushed the pillar up.
That's very like
so when the pillar
Zelda
was
water temple.
Yeah, when the pillar was all the way at the top, then the bottom doorway opened up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very Zelda-ish, very like Diablo 3. There's like kind of a water.
There's a lot of good. Anybody that's looking for good puzzles, Diablo 3 has a lot of great puzzles.
Yeah.
Like you can almost hear the in your head like when it goes off.
Yeah. I actually was gonna say that like the stone thing really sounded like a Zelda thing, like.
I think it was based off of the Zelda water temple. I put my own spins on it, but
obviously
make it yours.
Like it's
there was a giant squid that came out and attacked you.
It's like what we talked about with inspiration for characters. It's you can find inspiration from anything. Like you don't think that you're not being unoriginal if you not take an idea, but have an idea from somebody else and then make it your own. Like. We don't make our own T-shirts. Like I'm just going down that rabbit hole again of like making taking inspiration of puzzles and traps and stuff from stuff you've seen and stuff is very like it's okay. No one's gonna
dungeons are no different.
Yeah, no one's gonna think that you're subpar for
Yeah.
for using an idea.
Unless your player's just an ass.
And like you want to avoid using like you said, putting your own spin on puzzles.
Yeah.
You want to avoid like directly ripping puzzles from video games. Like we've all played Skyrim.
Yep.
Yeah, we all know.
You know the very first puzzle in Bleak Falls Barrow where you have to match the animals on the stones to the ones on the ceiling?
Yeah.
Don't just rip that.
No.
Spoiler, the pattern is bear, moth, owl. I have it memorized.
Oh, that's the claw door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one where you have to spin the stones is like dolphin.
The stone pillars or the stone
dolphin,
door?
bird, lion, or something.
Is it dolphin, hawk,
Whale, snake, hawk.
whale, snake, hawk?
We've all done this dungeon like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I like the replayability of Skyrim. What can
But
I
like
say?
if
God,
if I was DMing you guys in a game and I just like there are 3 pillars, each with 3 animals on them, you're just like,
Oh boy.
I mean, it's kind of a classic, but it's like I know what this is from.
Yeah. I mean, you can change it up to where like it's different symbols or something, but like
Or changing it like affects something else.
yeah, like it's a good puzzle design, but it's so iconic for that game that it's almost unusable because of it. Like you can still do like the spin stone. You just have to change like what's on it because
like
unfortunately Skyrim is like the biggest RPG ever.
Yeah. Like maybe make it instead of putting the solution literally on the ceiling, maybe make it like a
journal entry or something.
A riddle associated with the dungeon that solves the puzzle. Or maybe every time they get it wrong, it releases a few enemies into the room.
Riddles and puzzles go hand in hand.
Yeah. Like the DMPC, you can do.
I have notes on this.
Yeah, like wait,
it's not complete, but
I've heard like a old wives' tale of this place. Like you can do like a little poem or something that has like the answer.
There's a tablet in the room that has ancient Elvish. Does anyone read Elvish? Oh, I do. All right, what does it say?
And it's like a haiku.
Yeah. It's like, snowing on Mount Fuji.
Yeah.
It's still.
What could that possibly mean?
It's still a riddle, but you have the answer right there. You just have to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you just press it enough times and do it enough times, they can figure it out. If like they don't have the base requirements for like the elven or they didn't find the journal entry because they don't have a high enough passive perception. Have that option to where like the puzzle can be cracked. Sometimes, like if you're high enough level, then you can. There's gonna be consequences. But like at like level 1, if you click a button so many times in a certain order, it's gonna like.
I actually have a really funny example of like almost like an anti-puzzle.
Ooh.
It's I believe this is from a module. I can't remember where I saw it or where I heard about it. But you basically lock all of the PCs in a room and like they can't get out. They can clearly see the doorway where they have to go, but it's like blocked off by a big stone slab. And above the door is a timer from 1 to 10. And as the door's closed and as they get locked in, a button raises up from the center of the room, and then the countdown starts going. It starts like counting down from 10 to 1, and like the PCs will immediately start panicking.
Yeah, 100%.
Because they're like,
no one likes timed challenges.
they're like, God, it's a timer, and they'll immediately like, well, this is the only thing in the room we can interact with, and they'll slap the button, and when they pull down the button, the room goes completely black, but you can still see the like lit up numbers above the door, and then when they release the button, the lights come on and the timer resets and starts counting down again. And the whole point of the dungeon was like they have no idea what will happen when this timer hits 0.
Well, hell, if I'm gonna let it get to 0.
Yeah. So like every time it gets close to 1, they just have one person sitting next to the button slapping it to reset it.
All right, what do we gotta do? Slap the button, Jeffrey.
Meanwhile, everyone in the group is like looking around for like seams or anything.
Frantically, and the barbarian's just like slapping the button harder and harder.
And
like
like
if I
also,
break it, it'll just stop.
Like I said, I have no idea where this puzzle came from. So if you want to like steal it, then go steal it. The solution to the puzzle is let the timer hit 0 and then the door opens. and that's it.
Yeah, it's a red herring puzzle.
Those are my favorite puzzles. Like the
kind of gotcha puzzles.
If I would have just let it happen.
Like if you weren't so scared about what could.
Yeah. Well, like that's another scary thing about those kind of puzzles is like, now it's the I feel dumb factor, and the kind of like, oh, you're just kind of making me feel dumb.
Yeah, like don't use that in every single dungeon.
Oh no, but
maybe
like,
if you have like a wizard that's like known for being kind of a prick, like maybe put that in his
humble
dungeon.
Those characters a bit.
You know, like
yeah.
Maybe your PCs have been they've been in this dungeon for like 3 in-game sessions, and they're just like crawling on their hands and knees doing perception checks for traps, and then it's like, all right, well, here's your puzzle. You know,
figure it out.
You figure it out.
God,
shit, he's in it to win it.
I want to implement that puzzle at some point.
It sounds fun.
It's really funny when it goes off.
Well, now I'm stealing it, and I'm gonna make something horrible happen when it hits 0.
No,
turn it on its head.
And something else I have here in my notes is using easy puzzles to progress the main goal, and then using harder puzzles as rewards.
Yeah, that's a pretty classic thing where like the hardest puzzles are not necessary, but they yield the most reward. I like those. I like using those. And
when I say hard puzzles, it's very subjective, but a lot of time for me a hard puzzle is just like a skill challenge. Even.
Yeah.
Like maybe if you do the easy puzzle, but you do it fast enough or well enough, you get an extra something. Maybe like a little.
If you get through the skill challenge with no failures.
Yeah, like a +1 sword will roll out.
Yeah, like if you figured it out without like 20 minutes of hints, that you can, like if you do it, that's where it kind of gets tricky because you're giving them more, like it's giving them more incentive to succeed, kind of, and like. But you're also rewarding them for doing what they were already going to do. Yeah. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of the give and take.
Yeah, like we've kind of hinted, it's all done in moderation. Yeah. Like if you just throw good thing after good thing at them, they're going to expect it. Yeah. So it's be tactful, I guess.
Yeah. Pepper it in.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed our show, you can support us by leaving a rating on Area of Expertise. If you are listening on YouTube, a like or subscription is a great way to let us know you want more. This has been AoE, and we'll see you in the next one.